In the interest of having as much time available as possible, even if we can just sneak in one question, I'm going to get started right now. Make sure that we get underway here. I'm trying to figure out whether I got the right folder in front of me, so I think I'm in decent shape here. I get to introduce Carson, but I also get to introduce the topic a little bit, and I promise not to take too terribly long. We ended up initiating this whole project. I think it came out of a public policy meeting when we were talking about budgets and the need for the state library to be prioritizing the capital expense, although we couldn't put it in capital because it was a replacement budget, of replacing a lot of the hardware, end-of-life pieces that were coming up in the next couple of years. And we knew the budget process here in the state well enough to know that you got to start asking 2 or 3 years before you're desperate. So we started to have that conversation, and there were varying opinions. As we all know, there are different sections of the state that are more in need of state-provided technology backbone. And we also realized that we couldn't necessarily base today's needs on what we would be needing in 3, 4, 5 years or beyond as we looked for materials, products that would be meeting the needs for the next lifespan. And in the process of that conversation, there are different members of the group. I claim I came up with the idea. Somebody else says they came up with the idea. But we came to the point where we said, gee, maybe we should do a high-level overview. What's the technology infrastructure in the state look like? Are we putting our money where it's needed? Are we providing the services that are needed? What else is in competition? I mean, we all know we've been flat-funded since 2010. So how you move the dollars around and support the needs, but also prioritize the needs in a way that really, I guess, bolster up that equity of access for everybody in the state, making sure that there isn't anybody who's being left behind, because that's really our role at the state library. So we contacted Carson, and I will tell you a little more about Carson when we get to the end here, but I am going to talk a little bit about who's involved in this conversation today. We have David Dean here from the State Library. David works with JerseyConnect and also with our other IT within the State Library. And as we come to a later part in the program, he can talk a little bit to you about what maybe JerseyConnect can offer in terms of somebody to call as you're looking at building in the future, and what extra things we might be able to provide to anybody. You don't have to be a JerseyConnect customer. We just want to make sure you're aware of it. And Carson himself told me last night that having been, he got real nebulous. It was like, well, 20 years, well over 20 years, that he and the internet started, well, they weren't both infants, but he started in the library field dealing with the internet when the internet was more of an infant. So they've grown up together. I think Peggy is the one person in our office who's been to the Route 9 library in Delaware to look at some of the product of Carson's consulting work. And the thing that I keep being told about is this incredible space for people who are somewhere on the autism spectrum. It's all about colors and sounds, and it's using technology to provide a different learning environment for one faction of our multifaceted constituency out there. Anything else I need to talk about Carson Block? Okay, then I'm just going to turn it over to him.
Good morning, good morning. It's time for an infrastructure study project update. And I'm very happy to be giving this update because this has been a long project. And when we're thinking of infrastructure, my wonderful assistant Bonnie found this picture, and I think the thing to the right is either an exit or is it called a dog leg? Is that right? Okay. Thank you, because I discovered those the first time I drove this way. Last year, I think, driving to Atlantic City, I was just kind of cruising in the right lane, and next thing I knew, I was in a very nice small town. it was a good place to pull over. That was really, really good. The infrastructure study, though, started about a year ago, and I'll give you the reason why, because it's a very, very key, important reason. But we've had a team together to guide the infrastructure study. Mary Chute, of course, is our most important member. Yes, Whip Cracker. Kathleen is back to New Jersey and doing such a wonderful job. Mike is the Information Technology Director and Head of JerseyConnect. Kathy Schock-Green, the Executive Director of Library Link, NJ, is also on the project. And myself, I'm Carson Block. I'm a library technology consultant. And the way the project started and the way that it's continuing to go, this is our guiding set of statements. So the purpose is to assess the state library's current technology infrastructure for libraries in the state and to answer some questions in the process of that assessment. So what role, if any, should the state library play in providing and or supporting technology infrastructure services? What are the possibilities and what are the pitfalls in being in such a position and providing such a service? What library and technology models exist for infrastructure services, and what is a good fit for the diverse library landscape in New Jersey? How many people believe that New Jersey has a diverse library landscape? Oh, good. How many would say that the diversity may eclipse the diversity of other library landscapes in the country? Absolutely, absolutely. I'm learning more and more every day about New Jersey, so this is good. The other two questions are: should the infrastructure change in any way? Should it shrink or should it grow? And if so, in what ways? And how stable is the financial support for the infrastructure into the future? Those are our guiding principles. Initially, envisioned this as having three distinct project phases. We still have three project phases, but before I give you the details on that, let me tell you what the framework is for learning. The first is listening and synthesizing. So that's collecting, compiling, and creating a shared understanding of the current state of New Jersey's technology infrastructure from the perspective of multiple stakeholders. That includes users, non-users, JerseyConnect staff, and possibly anyone else that we could learn from. So I've been talking to everybody that I can. The second is understanding the technology environment and the technology opportunities that exist. So this is a study report and, wait a minute. A study report and creating a shared understanding of where New Jersey's library technology infrastructure fits within the landscape of peers, which would be other library organizations offering similar services, and the greater technology industry, which would be non-library providers of such services. And finally, recommendations. Based on all the work to date, I'll make recommendations to inform strategic and budget directions for New Jersey Library's technology infrastructure. Doesn't that look nice and neat? Isn't that like usually when you're planning, it's like, 1, 2, 3, and we're done, right? Okay, so one thing that we realized is that to do a good job with this listening and synthesizing, we needed to talk to a lot of people. We all agreed that the library landscape in New Jersey is as diverse as it gets, perhaps, in the country. And so that phase needed to go on. And so the work to date that we've performed is we had, like I said, we had a kickoff meeting about a year ago. I came back to conduct some focus groups. We had a wonderful opportunity with the directors meeting that happened in October of last year. So I came back to New Jersey for that. In the early part of this year, conducted phone interviews with the directors of consortiums. Also came back, I think it was last month, to talk to New Jersey State Library staff members, and then conducted more phone interviews with group leaders. And if that wasn't enough, we did a survey as well of group participants. We were hoping to have focus groups as well with every group that you see up here. Logistically, that's really, really hard to do, and it's especially hard to do remotely because there's so much nuance that comes up in an in-person focus group group that does not happen. If you try to do it on the phone, it's hard enough to have a conversation with 2 people. You start adding more people onto that, it exponentially has less value in terms of getting feedback. So we did a survey, even though I know everyone's surveyed to death these days. So I always try to hold back on doing surveys. So we had a couple of project adjustments to that nice, neat, and orderly thing I showed you. The first thing we did is we increased the amount of time for the listening phase, because as I was learning more about New Jersey's landscape and learning more about the issues, the more that I and the committee realized how important it was to hear from as many people as possible. Right? This is a landmark of New Jersey to understand the different needs from different perspectives. We really had to roll up our sleeves and do a lot of work. And also abandon the idea of a neat and tidy sequence for our project phases. This was more like concurrent work that was happening. But I can say that within the last, I think our survey closed a week and a half ago or so, that the listening phase has wrapped up. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Even though I've been doing some work on the other phases as we've gone, I'm not ready to share that. But the feedback has wrapped up. And I just wanted you to know that we've give you just a quick representation of the folks who we've heard from. And I have an infographic that proves I talked to everybody in New Jersey. Isn't that great? We did our very best to find and be as representative as we can, in all seriousness, because it is hard to talk to everybody, but we wanted to make the best effort that we could. So we as a group, as a committee, put a lot of time and a lot of effort into making sure that we touched as many people as we can. So this is a familiar map to you. The first touch, of course, was the library directors focus groups that I was able to do during my first visit. This is for the county-wide types of systems. The second was the Buckles Library Focus Group. I was able to do at the same time, and that is a representation. Hopefully you can see those dots okay. The other is JerseyConnect staff, that little dot right there. Everyone was in one place at one time. That was very, very nice. There was the other consortia leaders as well, and I'll toggle back and forth. I know it's kind of hard to see those there, but maybe if with all the blinking lights we have in the casino here, maybe this works better in Atlantic City. Again, coming back to talk to staff at the New Jersey State Library, it's very important to hear the staff perspectives. And then finally, the library groups and the group survey helped round out the outreach. And so we feel like we've had some input from just about every region of the most densely populated state in the United States. So hopefully that's good, right? I already talked about the overview, but this is the breakdown in terms of the dates that we were visiting. And one thing I wanted to note is that these slides I'm breaking all the rules in terms of nice readable slides because this is also serving as a report that we'll be sharing later, and I wanted to have the information in there so that everyone could refer to it as well. Before doing the interviews, it was really, really important that we started with a basis. So what I did is work with New Jersey library staff to compile and send out information that already exists. I didn't create any new information here. This was information that already exists and information that they had shared. And it's also important to note that I did ask questions about, even though this is a study of infrastructure and we're looking at technology infrastructure in a general sense, it was very important to talk about JerseyConnect because JerseyConnect is the current way that infrastructure is manifested, right? It's the service provided. So it was very important during this assessment phase to understand the performance of JerseyConnect from every perspective. So we sent this baseline information talking about services that are free for all libraries and then services that are free for connected libraries. You've probably seen this brochure before. We also sent, just for awareness throughout the state, we sent a service density map from JerseyConnect. And this was to show the number of services, but the darker, the more services within that region that are used of JerseyConnect versus the white where there's like no services used. But that gives an idea of the services and how the services are spread. So we wanted to have that as a baseline. before I start asking 10 very simple questions, right? And they're all like really, really tiny. But the idea here was to see, the first thing I wanted to know is if anyone was surprised by anything that they saw in information that already existed. Then getting back, and this is about JerseyConnect specifically, but then I really wanted to know a little bit more about what the technology needs were for each library, from each library's perspective, because that's very important. I often say that great libraries are hyper-local. This is both a blessing because it helps us serve our direct constituency really, really well. It's also a curse because that means sometimes it's a little bit harder to do things that scale. And so I needed to understand where the hot spots are for each library and the advantages and things like that. I also wanted to get a sense for the gaps that you might have or might not have in technology support. Just in general, looking at this holistically, not looking at this from shared services or centralized services, but just holistically. What sort of challenges do you have in terms of technology in serving your patrons? Because after all, every one of us in this room, at the end of the day, is working for the patron who walks in our door, our virtual door or our physical door, to provide them services, including me. That's my job on behalf of everyone here, and I want to do a good job with that. I also wanted to know the sorts of dreams that everyone had for their technology, as well as their issues that they have. My favorite discussion, though, is talking about the dreams, too, because it's good to take the governor off once in a while and not think about what constricts us or restricts us from achieving things that we want to achieve, but instead say, well, if all bets are off, what would we do? The purpose of a question like that is it really helps us focus on aspirations instead of the roadblocks that get in our way. So that question is always important to me whenever working with anybody, and it's important in my own life, for goodness sake. I also wanted to know about an assessment from different perspectives on the strengths of JerseyConnect and areas where JerseyConnect could improve, because as customers, you have an opinion on this, and I wanted to hear that opinion. The other thing, the last two questions really centered, and these proved to be very, very interesting to me as well, is that we know that the diversity in New Jersey doesn't stop at the library level. It, in fact, extends politically throughout the state, right? There's a lot of political diversity in the state, and I needed to have some advice because I have been charged with creating recommendations for a shared service of some sort. That's at the core of it, right? A shared service. In New Jersey, there's a focus on localized services first, and so I needed advice on how to best approach that question, and that turned out to be compelling. And what I found is that everyone I talked to, especially one-on-one, it wasn't like a yes, no, let's get this question over with. I could tell that this was something that everyone thinks about all the time, looking at that difference, politically. And so that was extremely illuminating to me because I think that within the answers to those questions are glimmers of destinations and aspirations, because after all, we're talking about a shared service, something that it scales really, really well. And so that's was awesome. So, after that preamble, what have we learned, you might be wondering? Well, I'm going to share with you some of the high points of this. And again, some of this information is literally hot off the press. And some of you have contributed to these conversations. So you might see your own words up here, but we're using Chatham House rules. There's no attribution, but these are quotes that I think are really, really good. The first thing that struck me is that not everyone has the same idea of what services are provided by JerseyConnect. That's a pretty basic thing, right? And you might go, oh my gosh, we're horrible people. No. This happens all the time. This happens with most of the folks who I work with, is because we've all got so much attention, right, in a day. We all have so much information coming at us. However, this can be a problem if we don't have all the shared understanding and the same understanding of a service. And so, the last two quotes, I'll just say, My understanding is that many services are attached to E-rate, right? That's pretty broad, and that's actually fairly loaded because we all have different opinions on E-rate based on our local services. Like some of us are fine with E-rate and we enjoy the discounts. Others say we're not going to filter. It doesn't matter. We're going to find our funding in some other manner. And so that's a point that I think really needs clarification. It was also hard for newcomers, as it always is, somebody who's been in their position for a short time to understand what's going on and what sort of resources that they have. There was also some confusion between JerseyConnect services and other state library services. So when talking about Technology Dreams, I had one respondent who noted that offering who gave us comments about the Jersey Cat statewide ILL system, which is of course a different service. Other commenters offered feedback about electronic databases. So within these individuals, all of those services were kind of melding together, right? So this is interesting to know. Also, the other thing goes, I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but goes to getting the message out in a way. And this is JerseyConnect doesn't do a good job of telling what they do and do not do. There's confusion over whether it's part of the state library or not. Why does it have a different name? They're hiding light under a bushel. So that's a pretty strong statement and assessment from this person, I think. The view of JerseyConnect services may depend on who you are, where you are, and whether you have other options for your technology needs. And you're all residents of New Jersey, and you're saying, well, of course, Carson, of course it would depend. But I think one of my favorite quotes was, geography is destiny, from one of the people I talked to. Some counties have more options than others because of the way infrastructure has developed. Some municipalities will see the value in larger units of service sooner than the state at large will. And I thought that was extremely powerful statement. And something that I want to make sure is respected within the infrastructure study and the recommendations. If it's true that geography is destiny, this is a big deal. That's a strong statement. Some county libraries may not be aware of all that is offered through JerseyConnect, or they simply do not have anyone on staff who can understand the purpose of those services. That's heavy, okay? That's really heavy. That's having a resource and not understanding its significance or its role in the quiver of opportunities and resources that are there. Also, it also seems like JerseyConnect is marketing their services to independent non-consortium libraries, and we sometimes think JerseyConnect presumes our library consortium has us covered. So those are kind of like flip sides, right, of the same coin. Having access to a trusted technology consultant is really valued. And it says here from New Jersey Libraries, because that's what this report is about. This is our life in libraries. Everyone needs a trusted technology partner within their organization or outside of their organization. But the idea is the trusted part, someone to help them who cares about their problems, understands their problems and issues, and wants to help them. This happens too with changeover in staff. From one director to the next, expertise can appear or disappear. If someone on the state level could back that up, many libraries would find that valuable. More in-depth consulting for libraries is the third bullet, and then the last one is our last bullet says one director would love to see consulting services, even if there is a cost associated with it, especially for smaller libraries without technological staff to approach it on a professional level. So at some level, everybody needs somebody sometime, right? But this is really important as technology changes so quickly. And especially thinking about the hyperlocal things, sometimes the problems that one library have are not the same as the neighboring library. It all has to do with your service choices. We also asked what was going well and what could be improved under going well. Lots of great service, great support. That was mentioned frequently about JerseyConnect itself. JerseyConnect allows for libraries without all the necessary staff or equipment to continually stay relevant in a world which is beginning to revolve more and more around technology and networking. Responsive to questions. They know public libraries, for better or worse. I'm not sure what that meant, and do a really excellent job of balancing infrastructure security and stability with the demands of opening up resources to the public. And consulting has been very important. Network redesign, VoIP connectivity, and bandwidth issues used for ISP hosting, E-rate, JerseyConnect is a tremendous value. So those were the praises for the current infrastructure of JerseyConnect. Improvement ideas, and this is common when I do these assessments all over the country. The improvement ideas always outweigh the doing well, because everyone takes the doing well for granted because it's very transparent. But these are also very, very important. And these are small, so I'm going to read each one. Marketing and public relations could be improved. Not everyone knows about available services. JerseyConnect could be more vocal in exactly how they provide services, such as hosting meetings for the library staff, which would illustrate the services provided and how they plan to assist libraries in carrying them out. That's like a complete project management sort of request. Our IT staff is sometimes unnecessarily concerned about handing off power to JerseyConnect. So that's talking about some friction between the local library and JerseyConnect services. Responsiveness of in-person IT for large system versus lag time waiting for JerseyConnect. So this is coming from a library that has resources more readily available, and so looking at a state agency, there's lag involved, and that's not desirable in their case, since they have a different sort of resource. JerseyConnect needs more money and support from the state library to help libraries in New Jersey. We should all be working together, but the initiative needs to come from the higher-ups in the state library. So that's speaking to prioritization within budget realities to say this is what this needs. Email is not the greatest. That's nice and simple, right? It's just the email either works or it doesn't work. So for this person, they didn't think it was the greatest. Becoming more of a resource to help troubleshoot software, hardware issues that arise within libraries when customer support is not available from those companies or unable to help. So this was something that resonated throughout for libraries of certain size. They just need some help keeping the lights on, right? And I would say that keeping PCs and computer equipment operational and available to patrons equates to keeping the lights on, right? It's got a higher level of technology involved or expertise involved, but it's a service that people expect. And I think that we need to remember that when we're doing infrastructure planning or doing something more on a global level, that it's that end user who's the most important and the end service that is the most important. That's why all of this exists. It's for that purpose. And this is one that's very common request, very hard to provide, but a very common request. Tech support at nights and on weekends. Not that someone is always there, but maybe have some form of emergency contact, or at least know someone will review cases to look for critical issues like a downed connection. This is really, really huge. How many people here work on weekends? Okay, so you're on your own if something goes wrong most of the time, right? It's like you're like, I hope the lights stay on, and if they don't, I got to figure it out, probably by myself. So I think those were extremely good, and I hope that also, even though this was specifically a question about JerseyConnect, I hope that illustrates why I was asking broader questions as well. I think it would be dangerous to look at the effects of a service within the current definition of that service. I'm really the most concerned about what you need, what New Jersey libraries need, and then going back to our original goals, what is the role of the state library either in filling those services or not filling those services. So here's some ideas for future directions. These are not promises. These are just ideas. I'll say that again. These are just ideas for future directions that had come up from the interviews. If the state library were to call service providers and say, we represent all libraries in New Jersey, that would be powerful advocacy for all libraries. It's an interesting comment. Bandwidth, but we can't afford what we need, even with E-rate. I hate seeing that because E-rate's never been better than it is right now. And when a local library cannot afford bandwidth, even with E-rate that they need, it breaks my heart, and it's the reality. And that's something that we have to face head on, because we need more bandwidth. Whatever you have, you need more. Maybe not this moment, but you will. So That's extremely important to me. Even more support for infrastructure and network services, including streaming, e-content, Wi-Fi, and others. And so this is really talking about, again, a robust and scalable sort of approach to network services. State Library could facilitate access to ebooks, e-content for all. State Library's leadership role is important. So from this participant's perspective, the State Library's role is important in looking at services that apply in a more broad fashion. Effort to vision for the state and help libraries figure out where to go and how to get there, and consider how to maximize the resources at the state level to serve the local level. Leadership. This is really about leadership here. And then finally, if JerseyConnect can help with mobile options and training, somehow that would be wonderful. Right? So those are really, really good needs. What I didn't include is that the vast majority of the ideas, the dreams, the majority were really like essential basic things, like let's keep the lights on, right? So this is what I'm tempering, because I know to keep the lights on, we still have to make sure that our path is clear ahead. So just so you know, I'm trying to keep an eye and a foot in both of those worlds. All New Jersey libraries have an interest in robust technology, and this is, again, from the essentials. You can't separate 21st century librarianship from tech, and I don't think the workforce is handling it as well as they should. With changes in automation, AI, things that are affecting the workforce, that is extremely important. So you may feel like libraries don't have to be involved in robotics and AI and automation. However, this will affect all of our communities in some way, shape, or form. Since we're in Atlantic City, guess what? In Las Vegas, the workers' union went on strike because of threats of automation to their livelihood, right? This is an issue that we will face throughout the country as automation comes on. And I believe this is a topic for a different time, and I was just in Maryland talking about this, but that's something that we have to face. Having more than one computer and to be able to teach computer classes. That one broke my heart too, right? Having more than one computer and having not just that aspiration, but to be able to teach and to be able to expand that. That is a library that's prime. They've got the right thinking and not the adequate resources. Generator for power outages, that is constantly a problem, especially in rural areas or areas with bad power grids. Continued maintenance, it's pretty basic, right? Workshops for patrons on new technologies, that's a cool thing. Fast Wi-Fi and internet and dependable connections. All the way to the leading edge, and this is where where my happiest times come, to get to gigabit connectivity and beyond, right? That's what we need. And it's that next level of speed, whatever that is for you, and then beyond, and I love that. I'd like for us to be in the forefront of technology and offer services that make our patrons' lives easier and more connected. That's beautiful. Have an updated mobile-friendly website that's easy to navigate, a better web presence, stronger continuity of services, and we wish to bring this library into a network infrastructure which would rival that of most business infrastructure. Yes. And we need that for all libraries. The final question that I asked, that was very important to me to understand how to make recommendations that work for a diverse state, which is no easy task. It's kind of like being on a tightrope, right? You know, but it's possible. A number of different really good feedback. Some people saying shared services are the way to go. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around how it makes sense financially and otherwise for every library to go it alone to the extent that they do, even with the shared services that are available. And remember the map before, when I'm talking about shared services, I'm not just talking about things that come from JerseyConnect or the State Library. There's lots of shared services within different regions of New Jersey. So even so, it's a hot topic. Depending on cost and what autonomy is given up, shared services could be very good. We encourage localized services so we can manage any issues in-house, but also understand that some services need to be shared for better communication and compatibility. Localized services serve the needs of the community more thoroughly, but centralized services bring opportunities to communities which may not have had the chance previously if those centralized services didn't exist. So that's kind of a chicken and the egg assessment. Any shared service must be flexible enough to accommodate local variety. And I think that that's at the point of the tension of any consortium. Everybody wants the benefit of the lower cost, but everyone's fearful about what they might give up in terms of autonomy. That's a natural thing to work through. And shared services would be outstanding and most likely a necessity going forward, but many local and county issues make this a challenge. That's the political reality for this library and for many. Cost and performance are important factors in technology decisions. And if I was to say that there was one thread that went throughout this question is if folks said that if it performed better and if it cost less, it's an easy conversation or an easier conversation. I won't say easy, but it's an easier conversation. Those two elements together seem to be powerful in most of the folks that I talked about. Here's only a few libraries in our consortium are still connected via JerseyConnect. The rest have gone to commercially available connectivity. Libraries needed more bandwidth than they could get from the state at the time that the move was made, and now the bandwidth costs are more competitive, right? So there's that aspect of what is available in your area. You know, when people ask me about bandwidth, for instance, they say, well, how much should I have? And I always say, well, you need more. So let's start with that. Whatever you have now, you need more. But it really is a factor of what is available, what is the capability of the service providers in your area to give you service, and how much can you afford. That's the formula for bandwidth, and so I think that's a natural response and a very good representative response. One director would love alternatives to the current IT support company and doesn't want to pay over $1,000 a month. So some people are pinched just with the basics, right, for support. One director would like to move to less expensive, more flexible technology like Chromebooks, for instance. And there was a session here yesterday about using different sorts of technology to minimize maintenance to lower costs. And even with E-rate and the state library contract, bandwidth is expensive but necessary to meet demands. We also did a survey. I'm just going to give you a very brief look at the survey because those results were just in the last week and a half or so. What I did is I did interviews with the leaders of these groups that you see up here, and I asked each leader to send a survey link to their members. This was, we'll make a similar chart for the entire survey. This is just from the survey, but from everyone I talked to. But I thought that this was an interesting breakdown. Roughly half of the folks understood everything that was available via JerseyConnect. About half didn't understand everything. They would think of it through the lens of whatever service that they needed, and we'll see if that tracks through. But anecdotally, it feels like that was the same with the people I talked to one-on-one. This is really key because why would you need a service at all? Well, it's if you have gaps, if it's something that you can't provide for. And so this was the question I have. Do you have gaps in your technology? 31 out of the 36 said yes. Well, yes, I do have gaps. And these were the sorts of gaps that they noted. Minimal staffing. We're lucky to get computers updated. We'd like to start some new initiatives with technology, but haven't due to lack of support. No in-house support at all. Outside support must be paid for us or is partially provided through their consortium. Our IT person is only part-time, fixing a problem, and there are some higher level issues that they hire a consultant for. And so before we go into the next section, which I'll do really, really quick looking at the time. What's next for the infrastructure study? Well, this phase is, as far as I'm concerned, is completed. We have heard quite a bit of information. We want to take all of it to the infrastructure study team to review all that together. I'm going to discuss other library consortium and industry approaches to similar shared services with the team. And there's not a lot. You should know that. There's just a handful providing services like this. There's a lot of library consortiums in the country, but they're just like great libraries. They too are hyper-local. But we have a couple of different models to look at and to discuss. Consultant will make recommendations that address the library environment, the needs as voiced within the study that we just did, and consider emerging and future possibilities. Study team will review and comment on the recommendation, and expected completion of the recommendations report is summer 2018. We'll do our best to since we had to slow down to talk to so many folks, I'll do my best to pick up the pace. So now I'm going to give you, we're going to transition, so change your perspective just for a moment. Top tips for library technology construction. This is a completely different type of presentation, and I'm going to do it very, very quickly. But since you've got some opportunities come up, I want you to be bold. This is the time to change things dramatically in an opportunity that does not come up very often, so do not hold back. Get rid of the old junk. That's my truck. That's what I did last weekend. We're getting ready for a garage sale, and that's the back of my truck, and I was going through all these magazines that I had accumulated for some reason. If you plan and do it right to begin with, it'll be less expensive than trying to retrofit later. You know all the things that you're living with right now in terms of technology? This is your chance to wipe the slate clean and to do it right. So great technology starts with a good assessment, and that's looking at the current condition of all of your technology resources. That includes your equipment and the support that you have for technology. Asking the question, what's working well and what can be improved? We each saw an example of how that worked on a statewide scale. This is also something that you should do internally. And also identify the path to transition to the new. Thinking about staff in particular. What happens a lot of times, especially in a building project and especially when there's a lot of money, is technology gets done to staff. It gets done to them. Does anyone like technology being done to them? Didn't think so? No, it's horrible, right? So thinking about the staff transition is very, very important. That does not mean I'm saying don't push the boundaries. If that's what you need to do, push it. But think about the transition of staff so that they can become masters of this technology, because this is something that staff use as a tool to serve patrons. So they should never be on the end of the chain when it comes to this, but being integrated into what's going on. So shiny objects rightfully get the most attention. Lots and lots of computers are actually still really important in some areas. And so this is an example of tons and tons of computers, but please don't make the same mistake of putting the computers so close together. You'll be encouraged to do this by many architects if they haven't worked a lot with public services or they haven't thought about it. I hate doing this, and I do this a lot because I have to fly a lot. And patrons have stuff, and they need places to put things. So think about space and thinking about more room for that footprint. Everything in the discussion comes down to space for people, space for collections, and space for technology. So those things will always be at odds. It's okay to fight about that. Just really think about that. But in this case, I love this room, but those computers are way too close to each other. Same as these. But you know something? Look at that. That's full. That's Miami. Not more than a year ago when I was in Miami, and that was stacked. Think about a new twist on things. So if there's something locally that's important to you that you could do, you could, like in this library, they have a display of humans. It's just like going to a museum where you walk. No, I'm kidding. That's what that picture looks like, right? It's like, oh, this is where the human display is. That is actually an adult gaming room for gaming for grown-ups, for those older than 21 years old. And it's a very popular room. That's at the Pikes Peak Library in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Some folks are going all out, and they are going into multimedia production for patrons. And this is what a studio looks like, basically. I don't know how many people have been in a TV or production studio, but it's basically, this is what it looks like. And all the trickery is done with the way the cameras are set up, but they need lots of space and rigging and things like that for folks. Maker spaces are also real shiny objects these days. Some folks view them as trendy. Others look at them as integral to local business development or local skills development. So I don't know where you come down on that, but many libraries are doing maker spaces. And so they've got lots of cool things. If you want to see a maker space that I was involved with, visit Route 9 Library. I'm really proud of that library because we were able to do a lot of things right there in terms of the overall service mix. When you go in, you'll know what I mean. But basically the makerspace, the best makerspace is a lot of space that allows you to change things as you experiment. This is an iterative process. It's not a set and forget sort of thing. So the programming around makerspaces is very, very important. There's also stuff like venting. See the silver tubing there to the right for that laser cutter? When you're looking at the potential for your makerspace, it's really important to think again about the programming that you want to do, because you've got to make decisions like that about how you're going to handle airflow and things like that. And I would say that if you go to Route 9, take a look at the grid system that we put above the makerspace. The idea is that could be flexible over time. And if you're going to do something like that, steal that idea. It's a great idea. It's also a good time to remake your community meeting rooms to make sure that your audio and video sorts of approaches are perfect and working really, really well for your library. One tip that I'll give you is make sure that you specify a hearing loop for these areas. And a hearing loop is an inductive coil. It's old style sort of technology that surfaces the room. If people are speaking through a microphone, then the hearing loop will, if they have hearing aids, it will activate and vibrate their hearing aid in a way in which they can hear the audio without special equipment. You can also have equipment for people to use the hearing loop like this library does, but it just works naturally. I would also say that if there's a place where there's interactions where you have patrons who are using hearing aids frequently, like at a public service desk, at a drive-up window, this is also an opportunity to put in a hearing loop. And we did that in one library in upstate New York. Also look at your opportunity for doing self-service. Everyone has a different opinion on that, but if you have a demand for self-service, look at convenience for patrons. And awesome choice for self-service, not an unawesome choice. I'm not endorsing any of the companies you see here. These are just the latest pictures of things that I took at trade shows. If your circulation's healthy, this is a really good time to look at automating that in terms of moving those materials, because it's never been less expensive than it is right now, or more modular or more dependable. A lot of the kinks are worked out, so this is a good time. But think about workflows. Don't think about the machine. Don't think about the space that's available. You need to work with your architect to make sure that the space is adequate, because the people doing this work, they're doing physical work, whether there's a machine or not. They need to move, they need to have places to put things, and so it needs to be looked at in a holistic manner around the workflows that you have in your library and around your demand. This is also another type of makerspace, but this is also good. So this one's dedicated to teens. And this is a full media production sort of makerspace with a booth, right? So kids can go do voiceovers or go in there and rap, or just go in there and talk to themselves quietly. And last but not least, don't forget about making your meeting rooms really, really awesome. Every meeting room that I go to, I need to be able to walk in, open my laptop, and rock and roll in some way, shape, or form. Assume that every patron coming in with a laptop is looking to do the same thing, so that there's ergonomic access to power, the connectivity in there is excellent, there's a display device of some sort, and there's stuff to write on, like a whiteboard, or in this case, there's charts, but a whiteboard, something to sketch out ideas on. Scalable infrastructure, though, I think is really, really the sexiest thing of all. And I know that's not a very sexy picture right there. That looks nothing like what I was just showing you. But if you don't have scalable infrastructure to start, and this is something that you want to start early with your discussions, make sure that this is part of the discussion right up front, because it is so essential to make all of the technologies work over time. For any building that's being built right now, we need the proper mix of wireless that we all know about, Wi-Fi, but we also need wire. We need to have wire at strategic places within the library, and we will for a long time. Wire is still the most cost-effective way to get data signals around. Wi-Fi systems are awesome. The most robust ones are also the most expensive, and the ones you've got to replace every 4 to 6 years. So an investment in wire is very, very important. And don't forget about power if you're doing a makerspace. This is I showed you the sexy picture of the floor and all the stuff that looks awesome. Well, you need to have power in the ceiling. That'll drop down. And think about practical things like that. So think your trends and your opportunities. What unique needs are you seeing in your community, and what unique needs do you serve, and how do you want to help your community thrive? Make sure that you have a technology program that also is either part of your building program or is separate from it, but that defines in a room-by-room basis what's going on. I get called into projects when they don't have this, and this is really, really hard to unravel and to fix. And then there's cost surprises. You're going to be doing a program process as part of any building program. Don't forget the technology part, because you can add up these costs as you go early and have an idea, instead of getting sticker shock later and going, wait, maybe we don't need Wi-Fi. We need concrete. This is where the discussions come up. And so you want to head those things off as early as you can. Involve tech design and tech people early in the process, and integrate these folks throughout. Look for gaps that you have between what services are provided professionally by your architects and what your library or your consortium can provide. I guarantee you there's gaps everywhere. That's not a bad thing. Just make sure you understand what your gaps are and look at a way to fill them before it gets too late. And then the final tip is, after grand opening, you and your patrons will live here every day. So if you plan now, you can make it a great space for a long time, but you will have this space for a long time. So don't be tempted to go too fast on things that you've got to live with for a long, long time. And I've gone a long, long time. I've gone over, but I would also like to introduce David Dean, who's going to talk. He said 1 minute, right? Sure. About services that are available through the state library.
Thanks, Carson. So yeah, as Carson mentioned, technology infrastructure is a critical part of your library's construction plan, and especially for technology planning. Fortunately, as a New Jersey library, you have access to technology consultation from JerseyConnect. We can absolutely help review your construction plans and make sure that the technology infrastructure that you're planning will help meet your technology goals and will also address the needs of tomorrow's patrons and constituents. We've in the past done this for a number of different libraries. You probably find some fellow attendees who can attest to that. We can help you plan for wireless access point placement, technology or network cabling drops. Odds are you need more of those than you think, and really any other infrastructure technology issues. Like all of JerseyConnect's services are designed for libraries and staffed by a team that's dedicated to New Jersey libraries. Our services, specifically our hosted and managed services, let you rest assured that your data is safe so that you can focus on managing your library. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to come see me after the presentation. I've got some business cards. And if you want to see more about how we secure your data, we're launching a new series on our website at JerseyConnect.net/security.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Carson. That was great. You crammed an awful lot into that. Carson has said that if people have quick questions for him, he is around. He's not running away. I do think that there's a meeting that's going to take place at least in half of this room, if not both. Isn't this where we have the next thing coming up, I think? Anyway, but there might be some space here where if you wanted to tuck over in one corner, you could. Okay? Thanks, everybody, for coming.